very interesting. And it was interesting for me because I'd never, I mean, I'm first aid trained, but I've done a theory behind strokes and stuff. But in practice, you're not textbook. You know, you weren't a textbook stroke victim, really. Not everything that I've read and done. It's quite scary because it happened in less than 30 seconds. So I think I made a note somewhere that at 3:31 I popped in to see you because the other two guys were going to finish at 3:45, so you had 10 minutes to go. And at and I popped in, and then I popped out, and I popped back in again. It was 3:32 or 3:33, you know, so a minute and a half maybe, and then. So less than 2 minutes from, dare I say, normal to changed.
Gosh.
So as the crow flies, 2 minutes, no more than 2 minutes really. And I was just walking from one room across the corridor to another, so really quick. And you said that you think a fuse has popped. That was your phrase. Like a 13 amp fuse in a plug. You were confused and standing next to the window trying to get a signal on your phone. I think he's probably talking to Jen at that point. But the laptop was open, but nothing was going on. You held your laptop, your Mac thing out, and at that point you said, I don't know what to do. So I said, well, just wing it, thinking you hadn't got a plan for the close-up speech. So I said, well, we'll just wing it, you know. I don't know, wing it and make something up. It doesn't matter. And he said, no, I don't know what to do. I don't know, like, open, close, open. I don't know what to do with this thing. And so it was like a laptop like that. Yeah, I don't know. At that point, the security guy came up with the two reception girls. And then he took over, he stepped in at that point and then stood in front of you, held onto your wrist very loosely and kind of must have done some first aid scanning of your face or your condition and stuff. And he said, so I think you've had a stroke. We need to get you over the way. And then you went off. I had to wrap up the day, get all my stuff together, and then raced over to Siemens. I got into reception, and when I got there, you had already been admitted. So I explained who I was, and then I was allowed in. You were then in a cubicle, and there were lots of people sort of coming around. And at this point, they hadn't told you you'd had a stroke yet, but you were asking questions like, you know, why this isn't good. All these people around me, this isn't right. And it was at that point that I noticed your eyes, and I said, they all went out of the room to have a chat, as doctors do. So at that point I said, can I just ask you about your eye? Because I've only ever seen you once before, and I know you've got this odd eye. And you said, well, how bad is it? So I took a photo of it with my phone, turned it around, and you went, yeah, that's really bad. Because I didn't know what's good or bad. I've never, I haven't paid that much attention. So at that point, I think you'd acknowledged that something was bad. So the doctors all came back in again, everyone was having a chit chat and all this kind of stuff. And then they started mentioning, as doctors do, they started mentioning things but not the full story. And you were getting quite upset at that point because they know what they're talking about. They're mentioning things that are common knowledge to them, but it's alien language to you. And by then they'd whisked you off and done a scan on your, like an X-ray scan on your head. And they had it up on, not an X-ray, but they had it up on the monitors, the computer monitors. And roughly around that time, Alison turned up. But just before she turned up, the images of the brain with the white goo were on the screens in front of you. You were sitting upright. I was just sitting in the background waiting, and you said, look, tell me the way it is. You know, you must tell me the way it is. And they were, again, just about to tell you, and they said, no, I want to wait for Alison to turn up. And they went, no, sod it, just tell me now. And Alison must have been about 30 seconds behind that conversation. So, of course, she came in, and they just said, it's bad news, you've had a stroke and you've had a bleed. And your words were something like, that's not good, or something like that. And then she came in, I was like, look, I'm off, I'm going to leave you guys to it. During the consultants, they did this thing with your hands and your peripheral vision. So one of the nurses would get you to look straight forward and bring her hand from here. And one side, as soon as you got to about, 180 degrees, you could see it. And the other side, when she brought it round, you couldn't see it till it was about there. and I can't remember which eye it was, but obviously it was the part of the brain that runs the right side eye or whatever, and that was real. And she did quite a few of these tests, and it was always coming to about here before you couldn't see anything, and that was your big problem as well, because when they said these things to you, well, that can't happen. I need my peripheral vision for driving. I need it for spatial awareness. I need it to be in a room when I'm there, and you were rattling off all these reasons why this can't happen. But you were getting stuck with your words. You were trying to do things, and they asked you your age. You got your age, but not your date of birth. And you were a couple of years either side, and you couldn't quite put your finger on it. But you got your age definitely, and you knew where you were and the month and stuff. But you couldn't put your finger on your date of birth. I said, boy, textbook-wise, I wouldn't have diagnosed it at all, because everything you read and see on media and social platforms and your first aid courses, I think the first aid courses are actually not that accurate in these kind of things. They should draw from lots of experiences and show you lots of different versions of this and different versions of that, because that would have made a difference. And then they didn't refer to it as a stroke, they said it was a bleed. And when you first went in and you saw your screens, they just called it a bleed. I mean, you did say, what's that big white blob on the side of all that grey? What's that? That's brain. What's the white thing? Well, that's blood. Well, that's not good, obviously. And it was quite big, but it wasn't growing. And they did say that. They said it's not spreading. It's clotted already or something. Yeah, but it was the time thing. So not just me, but the security guard acted really quickly.
He did really well.
The security guard did a great job, and even if he got it wrong, he still called it in and made that call and thought, there's no obvious first aid issue here apart from something upstairs, let's get you over to there. And again, he made the right decision by not calling an ambulance, because that would have taken, well, he wouldn't have got one from the hospital, he would have got one out on a shout maybe. So the fact that he put you in a minibus, whizzed you over the road, or a car or anything, was again a very good decision. And then that was his job done. He made sure that you were there and you were safe.
And he works for?
The security guard works for Siemens. He's the security guard who was on duty then, so he would have been in charge of general gate security, personnel security. I think it was coming to the end of his shift as well. It didn't really matter, the usual stuff. And he made just the right decisions and got you the first bit, got the first leg, and got you into hospital quickly enough, without too much drama. And then the guys in the hospital did the rest of the job.
Yeah, it was really good of him, wasn't it?
Yeah, he did a really good job. He diagnosed it as best as he could with the limited information he had. But I suppose to him you were confused, and he'd never seen you before. I'd seen you once before, and once during the day. But to him you were confused, especially walking around the room acting a little bit odd, that kind of stuff. But the hospital guys, they did an amazing job of treating you, because I suppose they have to triage it really quickly, because is it life and death? It might not have been, so therefore you could have gone back in the room with people with broken ankles. Odd one really, and that was really funny, because there were lots of people in the waiting room with broken ankles, and they were miffed that you went in, and then I went in after you, and I was in and out and just waving at the door, and all these people like, why they got it? I've got my injury, so you didn't look like you had a break or a sprain or a cut, so that was just human behaviour. That was it really.
So the telltale, in hindsight, was what?
Confusion, I think. You were confused about everything. Using a phone, opening a book, talking. It was confusion.
So I didn't have any of the obvious symptoms.
No.
So what advice would you give to somebody?
Okay, I think two scenarios would be best at this point. So scenario A, you know the person. So if you know the person, even for a day or for an hour or so, within that short space of time you would have worked out what that person's like-ish, how they're well-mannered. So if they are different, behaving different through some form of confusion or just mischaracter or something like that, then I think that's got to prove that it's something not quite right with their head. So therefore, make the phone call, keep them safe in an area, and then just keep talking to them, trying to pull out more information, because you know how they should respond or how they should behave, because you know them. If you don't know them, it's a total stranger. If there were no other obvious symptoms, and you don't have to be a first aider to work out there's a blood, bleed or break or something like that, if there's no obvious symptoms, then it is going to be another head thing. It's going to be something to do with the brain. So therefore, if it's not obvious because of other symptoms, then the confusion again has taken place. So although you may not be able to prove that they're acting out of character, they still seem confused or dazed or a little bit disorientated. So I think the biggest thing that I've got from this is that if you can't prove it's anything else from a first aid point of view, and they're just not right, they're acting a bit odd, then that's it. That's got to be something to do with the head. And once you've acknowledged that, it's time to make the phone call. I have to say, with my first aid hat on, you should make sure it isn't anything to do with them. If they could be dazed and confused by having a bump on the head, they could be bleeding. So once you check that out, I think that would be the way forward. But with yourself, you were stood upright, you hadn't had a fall, there was no obvious damage around you. So it had to be something upstairs. And the fact that you said a fuse had popped was one thing, but maybe that's what you should think. Maybe it's just like, your lamp doesn't work.